Imagine working 40 hours a week and still not having enough to pay your rent. Imagine standing in the grocery store having to put items back because your paycheck won't stretch far enough. For millions of Americans, earning the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour isn't a rare struggle. It's their everyday reality. They are working, but they are not earning enough to live. So, today I want to persuade you that the federal minimum wage should be raised to $15 an hour. I have researched work published by the Economic Policy Institute, the U.S. Department of Labor, the National Employment Law Project, and several studies on wage policy. These sources all point to the same conclusion. The minimum wage should be raised to $15 an hour. So let's look at the problem. The federal minimum wage has been $7.25 since 2009. That's 16 years with no increase, while the cost of housing, groceries, childcare, and transportation has gone up. But wages have stayed the same. First, the minimum wage has completely failed to keep up with the inflation. In fact, when you adjust for rising prices, today's minimum wage is worth less than it was in the late 1960s. A single minimum wage paycheck simply doesn't buy what it used to. Second, millions of Americans cannot afford basic necessities. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, a full-time worker would need to earn over $20 an hour to afford a modest one-bedroom apartment. That means a person earning $7.25 is already set up to fail. Not because they're lazy, not because they're irresponsible, but because the math just simply doesn't work. Many low-wage workers end up relying on government assistance programs, not because they want to, but because a full-time job isn't enough to survive. But this problem isn't actually impossible to fix. There is a clear and tested solution. Raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour is one of the most effective steps we can take to reduce poverty and strengthen the economy. First, a $15 wage would give financial stability to millions of workers. The Economic Policy Institute reports that raising the minimum wage to 15 would increase the earnings of nearly 32 million Americans. It would lift families out of poverty, reduce stress, and give people the dignity of being able to support themselves through hard work. Second, raising the minimum wage actually helps the economy. When workers earn more, they can spend more and put it back into the economy and back into local businesses. Cities and states have already implemented a $15 minimum wage, like Seattle, New York, and California, and they've seen increases in worker pay without the catastrophic job losses opponents predicted. In fact, job growth in many of these areas have remained steady or even increased. Now let's imagine what the future could look like. Picture a future where someone working a full-time job can actually afford to live. A future where a single parent doesn't have to choose between buying groceries or medicine or paying the electric bill. A future where workers don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to survive. With the $15 minimum wage, this is possible. Families would experience less financial stress. Communities could see stronger local economies. More people would be able to pursue education, training, and better opportunities. But if we do nothing and the minimum wage stays at $7.25, the gap between what workers earn and what they need to continue to grow will just get larger. More families will fall into poverty. More will have to work full time. and even second jobs and still not be able to pay the bills, and the cycle will continue. So what can we do now? Today I'm asking you to take action to support the raise of the federal minimum wage to 15 an hour. You can call your representatives at 202-224-3121 and tell them you support a living wage. You can also sign petitions through organizations like 5 for 15 or the National Employment Law Project. And most importantly, vote for leaders who support raising the minimum wage. No one who works full-time should struggle to live. A $15 minimum wage is not just an economic policy, it is a matter of fairness, dignity, and the belief that hard work should lead to a decent life. Thank you.